Hey, it's Mega, aka the Art Messiah, here to save you from your art sins. Welcome back to day 25 of the 30 Days of Making Comics Challenge. Today we're going to be talking about how to write an incredible middle for your story. And I have 4 tips for you guys today, so make sure you're jotting down some notes, and we're going to go ahead and hop right into the first tip. So the first tip is to flesh out your conflict, okay? So we have the beginning of the story, and we know where we're kind of headed. We know the storm on the horizon. The middle of the story is where we need to define this conflict and make this conflict feel real. And, the more complex the conflict is, the more interesting the story is going to be. Now, thinking about it this way, if you have a conflict that is easy to solve, then your reader is going to be thinking to themselves, well, why doesn't the main character just do this? Or why don't they just do that? So it's not going to keep your audience interested or engaged because they think it's a very simple problem. So make sure you're really fleshing out your conflict and giving it some complexity, something that can't be solved with one action, something that's going to take some time to figure out and to solve. Okay, tip number 2. Make mini stories in the middle of your comic. Otherwise, your story may start to get boring if you're constantly just trying to solve this one issue over and over and over again. It's okay to get sidetracked, but not too far sidetracked where you're not even touching upon what the main objective is. So these little side and mini stories should be telling us something about the world and the stories and the characters that is going to reveal some important information that will help us understand the grand solution, so to speak. And also really make sure that you drive home that within these mini stories, the reader is starting to think, well, we're starting to see more of the conflict now, and you want the reader to think, what kind of creative solution will this hero have to make in order to, achieve his objectives and his goals? Okay. So tip number 3, every scene needs to have a purpose. Let me explain what I mean by that. So in this case, I mean it to be very general. I don't mean that for the audience, the purpose has to be apparent in how it plays into the larger story. But as a creator and an author and a writer and an artist, you need to bring purpose to each scene. You need to question yourself, why am I showing this scene? Why am I showing this character interaction? What is it doing to help the story progress? Or what is it doing to reveal a little bit more about the world, about the characters? And one of the biggest mistakes that beginners make, and I'll probably make it as well, but it's that we get caught up in the middle and we forget to make it interesting. We forget to make sure every scene has purpose because we're just thinking about that end goal. We're thinking about finishing, so we sometimes lose track of what it is that we need to be doing with each scene. And each scene is a way for you to do some storytelling and to really make your characters come to life and to really make your world come to life and your conflict come to life. So if you're not starting to see what I'm saying now, is that you want to make the middle part of your story actually the most interesting, engaging, and fun part about it. But oftentimes we get bogged down with the details, and we forget to make the middle of the story fun and enjoyable for the reader to go through. Okay. Also, I want to mention that, the middle is a great time to explore humor and struggle and pain and reflection. So the middle of your story is where you really should be having the most fun and really being exploring the most, right? You're supposed to be really just, it's almost like a rubber band where you're just stretching it. You're stretching your world. You're expanding your world. You're doing all this this building, character building, world building, and you're making it fun and enjoyable to stretch this rubber band, because you know what's going to happen when you let go and release. It's all going to come back to a point, and all that energy is going to return for a fantastic finish. So think about stretching your story like you're stretching a rubber band. You're building up anticipation and excitement about what's going to happen next. Okay, the fourth and final tip that I have for you is that you need to put your characters through failure. Okay, a story is not interesting without the characters failing, and sometimes over and over and over again. But kind of going back to my last point, don't make it repetitive and don't make it boring. Make these failures exciting. Make these failures feel like you've learned something and that the main character has learned something. Make these failures engaging, emotional, and impactful. And this is what's really going to drive your middle to be, the strongest part of your story ever. Because you'll keep readers on their toes, because they won't know if your character is going to succeed or fail. So this is when you get to change up that story structure and that pacing and everything, and really, throw the audience in for a loop and for an adventure. Think about some of your favorite stories and how they've managed to make the middle interesting. Okay, some of my favorite stories are Lord of the Rings and One Piece. Those are both kind of like epic kind of stories, right? Where it's a grand world and it's a grand theme. But just because it's a grand world and a grand theme, they bring it down to a character level and they really show this incredible journey. So think about your favorite stories. How are they doing that storytelling in the middle? What keeps it exciting and engaging? And it's that failure that really drives you to keep on reading, because you want to see these characters succeed. Okay, so before, I guess, you let the character fail, you have to give them and the reader a reason to want to believe that they can succeed. In my favorite comic and manga, One Piece, our hero Luffy, he always fails. Okay, he's brave, he wants to do the right thing, but he's constantly failing. And that's what makes the story interesting, because we want to see how he will overcome failure. As humans, we want to know how to overcome the challenges that we face, and that's why we kind of look to stories. So to kind of recap everything that I said, the first tip was to flesh out your conflict. The second tip is to make mini stories within the middle of your story. Tip number 3 was every scene needs to have a purpose. And number 4 is failure. Make sure your characters fail. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys and helpful to start writing this middle. This is the most difficult part of story writing, because your kind of initial energy is starting to fade. So that's why you have to make this part really engaging and interesting, so that you can stay interested in drawing your comic and you can keep readers engaged. So let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. How do you like to go about writing the middle of your story? And until next video, keep making that best comic possible.